At number 10 we have the Screaming Tunnel. If you ever head down to Niagara Falls, there are plenty of ghost tours you can go on. This place is chock full of a ton of fun and interesting ghost stories that you can find. One of the oldest and creepiest is that of the Screaming Tunnel. There are plenty of stories that go along with this old landmark, and all of them involve a young girl and a deadly flame. What exactly happened? No one really knows. Some people say a young girl was murdered and then her body was taken to the tunnel and then lit on fire as an attempt to hide the evidence. Other people say her clothes caught on fire when she was smoking a cigarette, but no matter what happened, it seems that a ghost of a young girl has never left this spot. If you walk through the tunnel and light a match or spark a flame of any kind, the flame will be blown out and then you will hear the scream of a young girl who is being burnt to death. At number 9 we have the Moonville Tunnel in Ohio. This tunnel is such a classic ghost haunting it. It feels like it was pulled right out of a Scooby-Doo cartoon. The old Moonville Tunnel used to be a passing for trains, and here's the thing, sometimes people will risk their lives to save 10 minutes. Cutting through the tunnel is a nice little shortcut, but if you didn't time it right you could end up getting caught by a train, and for as long as I have lived I have never met anyone who is stronger than a train. So quite a few people met their end in this passageway, and a number of those people were actually railroad brakemen. Like a lot of people who die on the job, these ghosts haven't stopped working even in the afterlife. The ghostly silhouette of a man walking through with a bright burning lantern can be seen at night. Some guys just don't know how to take a day off. At number 8 we have the Blue Ghost Tunnel. If you're looking to double up on some ghostly tunnels right after you visit the Screaming Ghost Tunnel, then head down to the Meriton Tunnel that is tucked away in the quaint old town of Thorold. This tunnel is said to be packed with ghosts at night. People say a blue mist flows out of the tunnel at night, and you can see ghostly blue figures walk around the entrance. At one point there were so many people that were coming to this spot to view ghosts that the town laid bricks at the entrance to try and stop people coming through there, which I think is a pretty bad move. You should start selling tickets instead. That's the business mind. See, I'm a business guy. The backstory of why this place is so packed with ghouls is that there were 2 trains that crashed into each other in 1903. A lot of people died. Most of them were crushed to death, and a couple more died in an explosion. Now their ghosts called this place home. At number 7 we have the Twin Tunnels in Pennsylvania. I don't think you can get more gruesome of a backstory than this. The story as to why these tunnels are haunted goes like this. There was a woman who was having an affair with a man. She got pregnant and then she decided to hide the pregnancy. Once the baby was born, the man disowned her. Distraught and heartbroken, the woman carried her newborn baby along an overpass above the tunnels. She found an air vent. She then hung herself down the air vent while holding her newborn baby. When the woman died, her arms went limp and the baby dropped down into the tunnel. Now some people driving through the tunnel say they can see the body of a young woman hanging from above. Some people have said they've heard a crying baby in their back seat. At number 6 we have the Big Bull Tunnel in Virginia. What lurks in these tunnels we will probably never know. Some people think they're haunted because of all the people that have died in these tunnels over the years. Other people think there's something much darker that waits for them in there. There was a group of men who were working on a failed train engine back in 1905. One of them heard a horrible noise and looked back, and his 2 colleagues were paralyzed with fear. They swore they had seen some sort of beast move through the tunnels. Now was this just a bear or was it something scarier? Whether or not you think there is something waiting for you in these tunnels, you can bet that there is definitely something strange going on. At number 5 we have the Sensabaugh Tunnels. So there isn't just one tunnel haunted by the ghost of a baby. The Sensabaugh Tunnel also has a little baby ghost that cries out when you walk through. Some people who take a stroll through this tunnel can hear a baby's cries and the sound of splashing water. The exact story of what happened here has become urban legend, and it changes every time someone tells it, but here are some of the creepier ones that have stuck. Edward Sensabaugh lived up the street from this tunnel. One night he came home distraught, maybe even a little drunk, and rage took over him. Maybe he had some mental disorders, or maybe he was possessed by a demon, but that night he went mad and he killed his whole family, murdered every last member, and then took the baby down to the tunnels and drowned it. Then Edward Sensabaugh ran off and he was never caught. People think he still lurks around the tunnel waiting for people to walk through so he can make that tunnel their final resting place. At number 4 we have the Church Hill Tunnel in Virginia. Let's go off the main course for a minute. We have been talking about ghosts so much that we forgot there can be all sorts of supernatural things that stalk around tunnels. Like what about a vampire? Ooh, very spooky. In 1925 the Church Hill Tunnel was run down and falling apart. The town came together and came up with a plan to fix up the tunnel. They they were going to collapse a part of the tunnel and then rebuild it. So they tried this, but they ended up trapping 2 people inside the tunnel. They went in to save them. One guy made it out, but the other person died, and the guy who made it out said that they had disturbed something. The collapsing of the tunnel gave birth to a beast with sharp fangs that sucked the blood out of the man who was trapped there. This is where the story of the Churchill vampire was born. The vampire escaped, and some say it comes back to the tunnel to rest, and others think it feeds on people in the town. At number 3 we have the Railway Tunnel, Victoria Park, Brisbane, Australia. Some ghosts are babies, some ghosts are ladies, and other ghosts are 10 feet tall nuns that want to rip out your soul. This is where the stuff gets really good, guys. We're going to go into the super ghosts now. The backstory in this one is a little hazy, but some people think that it was a nun who was possessed by a demon who walked into the tunnel and then got run over by a train, and her spirit got entangled with the demon and now is trapped in the tunnel. There was a time in 1965 where people kept reporting sightings of this massive nun ghost. The word spread so fast that everyone and their dog wanted to see it. Every night people were coming down to the tunnel in droves. It got so bad that the police had to block off the entrance because so many people were going in there that if the tunnel was to collapse, thousands would have died. At number 2 we have the Gold Camp Road tunnels in Colorado. So what if I told you there wasn't one, not even 2, but a whole busload of ghosts that call this tunnel home? People who drive through this tunnel have heard kids laughing and playing. Some people have seen ghostly kids run through the tunnels, or have even seen little child-sized handprints appear all over the cars. Now, how did these kids end up ghosts in this tunnel? Well, there are a lot of different versions of this story. Some people say that there was a bus full of kids driving through the tunnel when there was an earthquake that hit that caused one of the tunnels to collapse and crushed a bus full of kids. Now their spirits are forever trapped there. And for the number 1 spot we have the Shanghai tunnels. This spot has the darkest history of any place on this list. The Shanghai tunnels were a very popular spot in the 19th century that connected downtown Portland to Chinatown. Many people would go down there to get some amazing food, go to some bars, maybe do some illegal gambling, or maybe even dip into something even naughty like a brothel. Those dirty, dirty boys and girls, I guess. I don't know, do they have lady brothels? Is that a thing? I'm not too sure. But the most sinister thing that was going on down there was human trafficking. Many of the bars and gambling centers down there had hidden trap doors in the floor that they would use to take blackout drunk people and slide them down into cages. And then they would slip them to who knows where. Men and women were sold into slavery, and people were kept in cages and hidden in underground passages. They would be drugged for a while, and many of them died. The tunnels have been shut down for a long time, but there are still stories of all the stuff that went on down there, and you can go on city tours that will take you through this historic landmark. People who walk through them now say they hear all sorts of strange noises. Some people hear bangs and whimpers, while other people feel someone watching them the entire time they are down there. If there has ever been a place that should be haunted, it is the Shanghai tunnels.
Coming in at number 10 we have the Channel Tunnel. The Channel Tunnel is 31.4 miles long underwater, and it connects the United Kingdom to France. The tunnel is recognised as one of the 7 wonders of the modern world, but the stretch has a dark history and an equally dark present. It seems that in the 6 years of construction between 1988 and 1994, 10 workers were killed, 8 of whom were British. The tunnel runs between 50 to 75 meters below the sea, which utterly terrifies me. I have actually taken the tunnel twice, but I live to tell the tale. Good! There have been 3 fires since the tunnel opened, which again really terrifies me. Aside from the 10 dead while the tunnel was being built, dozens of migrants have died in the tunnel as they try to cross into Britain. It seems that the death toll is now so high that train drivers are scared to do their job. Coming into number 9 we have the Lost Lizard People. In January 1934, it seems an article was released in the LA Times that mentioned what was previously an urban legend, a lost civilization of lizard people living under the city in a tunnel. What? It seems in Native American culture a similar story was also echoed. Some think that along with the lost lizards in the lost tunnel, there is also hidden treasure. To cut a really long story short that I would encourage you to Google, it seems that a man named Schufelt x-rayed previous parts of the land and seemed to reveal 3 lost cities along the Pacific coast. This included the one that was in LA, allegedly dug by lizard people 5,000 years ago. Okay. There are maps of the lost tunnel and everything. To me it all sounds very Doctor Who, but that being said, the legend is enduring in LA today. Coming into number 8, we have the bricked up tunnel in Whitechapel. What secrets do the bricked up tunnel in Whitechapel, London hold? If the name Whitechapel sounds familiar to you, it's because the historic area of England's capital city has a macabre history, most notably for being the site of the grisly Jack the Ripper murders. It seems that there is a bricked up train tunnel in Whitechapel station, and many people believe that it was the home of a rail route between the station and the Royal London Hospital. Why? Well, the answer is the corpse train, that's why. It seems that medics thought it was less alarmist and more sanitary to carry the dead to a morgue underground rather than through the already filthy streets. The name given to the stretch is the Necropolis Railway. This is one tunnel I don't fancy cracking open. I say that like I fancy cracking open all the tunnels. I don't. I feel like leave tunnels alone. Coming in at number 7, we have the Phantoms of Big Bull. Big Bull Tunnel is a rail tunnel in Virginia that was completed in the late 19th century. 2 workers even died whilst building the tunnel, however that isn't the worst thing considering the era. However, there is no accounting for the awful goings on that happened after the tunnel was built. It seemed that a man who entered the tunnel was found inexplicably scalped in 1901, but the biggest story surrounding the tunnel comes from 1905 when 3 men had a horrifying, life-altering experience. It seems that a freight train broke down outside the tunnel and one worker hurried through to put warning flags on the other end as to avoid collision. Makes a lot of sense. What doesn't make sense is that he returned back to his 2 colleagues pale and shaken. He claimed to have heard noises that, I quote, no man could stand. His 2 colleagues went through the tunnel to see what was going on, and it seemed that they heard groans and screams of pain. When they asked who was there, the replies came in, and they were hair-raising. One voice came from the darkness asking for a weight to be removed from their body. They said it was crushing them. Another screamed, "They're drinking my blood." What that means, I don't know. The story ran in the Pittsburgh Press, and it seems many believe the tunnel is haunted today. Coming into number 6, we have the missing link. In Eberby in British Columbia, there is a dark, dank tunnel that stretches beneath a former grow-op farm. Denise Albertine, whose 31-year-old daughter Nicole Bell, disappeared in 2017. He believes it could be a missing link in 2,500 unsolved disappeared persons cases in the province of BC alone. It seemed that the dank and gloomy tunnel leads to a windowless room with a locked steel door. When speaking to the Star publication, Albertine said, "This tunnel has a lot to hide." Now it is said that Nicole was very outdoorsy, so perhaps she walked into the tunnel. Another woman was found very nearby the tunnel in 2017. Did a ghost save 3 friends from getting lost in a tunnel? Find out at number 5. We have the old Shashiki Tunnel. The old Shashiki Tunnel in Japan runs 1,424 feet in length in total. Now it is dark and extremely terrifying. It seems in July 2019 a group of friends entered the tunnel and returned with a scary story. The friends ventured into a pitch black century-old passage at 1 AM amid the witching hour. 2 walked whilst 1 drove a car behind, videoing the adventure. It seems one of the youths felt his ankle suddenly pulled sideways, as you can see from this video posted on Twitter. The video went viral with nearly 500,000 views, and a fellow adventurer commented to say that the same thing happened to them 3 years prior. They even posted an image of a ghost lurking behind them. One commenter wrote, "You must go and see an exorcist. The ghost was actually trying to stop you from going deeper, you should thank it." Coming into number 4, we have the Blue Ghost Tunnel. The Meriton Tunnel is an abandoned railway tunnel that was built in 1976 to connect St Catharines to the town of Thorold in Canada. Yes, the death toll during the construction was exceptionally high. 107 people lost their lives as they excavated the pass, mostly as a result of falling rocks. The tunnel is best known for a horrific tragedy which saw 2 trains crash head-on at full speed. Both the firemen of the trains died in the crash. The tunnel was later sealed up but has been broken into by urban explorers who claim that they have seen a mysterious blue mist around the passage, which is where the tunnel gets its name. Some say that they have heard cries in the passage, and many have reported feeling physically sick after their visit. Coming into number 3, we have the Screaming Tunnel. The Screaming Tunnel is also in Canada. It's in Niagara, not too far away from where I am right now, and is one of the most famous haunted tunnels in the world. A lot of people enter this tunnel in pursuit of a ghost, but do all of them make it out? The urban legend goes that once upon a time a young girl escaped a burning barn and ran through the tunnel, which was then filled with water in order to, put herself out. Sadly, it was too late and she died there slowly of her injuries. Another version of the tale said that she was set alight by her father, who murdered her amid a custody battle, and another says that actually she was killed and her body was set on fire to hide the evidence. Whatever the story, it seems that each year hundreds of people head to the tunnel to light a match. If the flame blows out, the ghost is present. You could also be alerted to her presence by some general screaming that's said to spill out from the passage. Fun fact, the Screaming Tunnel was used as a backdrop location in David Cronenberg's 1983 adaptation of Stephen King's The Dead Zone. Really nasty at number 2, we have the Bloody Pit of Massachusetts. The Hoosac Tunnel in Massachusetts at the time of its opening in 1876 was the second longest tunnel in North America, spanning 4.75 miles through the Vermont Green Mountains. 195 people died during the 24-year-long construction, some of them horribly with their bodies buried beneath rubble. So many people died that the tunnel was nicknamed the Bloody Pit. Accidents involved gas fumes meeting the flames from lamps causing explosions. Tunnel collapses and flooding incidents also killed people too. There was at least one murder in the tunnel. In 1865, a worker who entered was found strangled to death, and the case was never solved. The many accidents and deaths that befell the construction led a lot of people to believe that the tunnel was cursed. Coming into number 1, we have the Zanetti mystery. This is such a strange and scary story, it's gone down in history as somewhat of an urban legend. It seems that there was a shocking disappearance of over 100 Italian tourists on a train in Lombard. In 1911, it is said that a 3-car train called the Zanetti left Rome and travelled through a mountain in Lombard. Aboard the train were 106 passengers and several crew. 2 of the passengers reportedly had a terrible feeling overcome them as the train shunted forward. In panic, they decided to jump from the train as it approached the tunnel. Now I don't know about you, but I would need to have a serious reason to jump from a moving train. The remaining passengers on the train glided through the tunnel, which seemingly trembled and closed up behind them. Weird. It was as if the mountain had simply swallowed them. The 2 jumpers survived and were treated for their injuries in hospital. Now it seems as if their lasting damage was psychological, as they explained that their last few moments in the train were filled with a milky white mist. The 104 other passengers were never found. There were some sketchy reports of 100 or so people turning up in Mexico speaking Italian and seeming very lost and confused, but these are unfounded.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Safe House. On May 5th, 2017, the YouTube channel Shai posted a video of him discovering and exploring a fully stocked underground safe house. He found it while walking through the grounds of an old factory in the industrial area of his city. As he was exploring, he discovered a strange concrete block with a metal gate on the side of it. He opened it and climbed the ladder. There, he found a dark, small tunnel leading to an underground bomb shelter and safe house. And what you're seeing here is the results of that exploration. The room seems to have been abandoned, but was also scavenged for valuables before its owners left. Some of the rooms contain old-looking military posters written in Russian. Many of the posters were mounted behind glass on a wall and lit up. I also find it strange that this place still has electricity. Other rooms contain boxes of supplies and equipment, enough for dozens of people. Why did they need those supplies? What were they planning? And perhaps most importantly, where are those people now? Moving on to number 9 now, we have The People Above. This video was uploaded in October 2017 by the YouTube channel Probs. They visited this underground bunker, but 5 of their friends ended up turning back eventually. That's how creepy it got. They said that continuing to explore it just as 2 was the worst decision they'd ever made and that it was terrifying. After following brick hallways filled with pipes, the rooms eventually began to open up. They still had no idea what the bunker was used for. There were strange holes in the floor that revealed another space below. It appeared that they were standing on just a thin bit of concrete. When the others left, the vibe got even creepier. Their bravery was rewarded though when they found a secret area where it seemed like the ceiling had actually caved in. The nervous laughter turned to genuine fear though when they heard someone else nearby.
I can hear someone on top of us.
It wasn't long before they decided to get out of there before they run into whoever or whatever was down there with them. Coming in at number 8 now, we have the water plant. In March 2018, an underground bunker in southwest England made the news when it went on sale for £28,000. That's about $36,500 for our American viewers. Is that a good price for an underground bunker? Maybe, but just wait until you see the inside. The bunker was built underneath an old water plant that had been decommissioned and largely forgotten about since the 1960s. It was bought by a man who wanted to turn it into a hostel, or, wait for this, a mausoleum to store the ashes of dead people. Okay then, as you can see from these pictures, it certainly had the right vibe for that. The rusting hallways and corroded rooms are being slowly reclaimed by nature. Moss and grass is now creeping over the old machines and corrugated walls. The owner said it isn't even suitable for residential living, and yeah, I think most people would agree. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Hello Satan. In 2014, 2 men in Germany were out exploring some woods when they found 2 strange pipes just sticking out of the ground. As they got closer, they found the entrance to a bunker surrounded by trees. They prized the wooden lid off using a crowbar and found an iron door. They went through that and followed a sort of dark hospital-looking corridor for what felt like forever. Other pathways appeared, but they decided to keep going straight so they didn't get lost on their way back. There were holes in the wall that appeared to be made by a hammer. Eventually, they started to find strange graffiti on the walls and realized they weren't the first people to discover this bunker. Now at first, it seemed like the kind of graffiti that just some kids would do for fun, but then the writing seemed to get more sinister when they found some graffiti that just said "help." Then they found a huge yellow door that seemed to have been ripped off its hinges. They didn't think it was possible for a person to do this. It looked about as heavy as a bank vault door. After that point, the room seemed to look more and more decayed. Eventually they found some graffiti that, in German, read "Hello Satan, I love you." Now that is when they knew they had seen enough. They quickly retraced their steps and left the underground bunker. Next up at number 6 now, we have Mothman's Lair. Those of you who have watched a lot of my urban legends videos over the years will have heard me talk about the Mothman, a creepy half man, half moth creature that was seen across West Virginia during the late 1960s. The locals said that the Mothman had a secret lair that only a few people knew about, the TNT bunkers in Point Pleasant. In 2016, Dan Bell uploaded a YouTube video of him and a friend exploring these abandoned bunkers. They had to make their way through pitch black marshes and woods until eventually they found the entrance to the bunker. Slowly, they headed inside in silence. The old walls were covered with graffiti, many of them making reference to the legend of the Mothman. There was also this satanic graffiti that said "Burn the Witch" and also 666.
That echo is insane.
After a short walk through the woods, they came across another bunker with similar writing on the wall. Needless to say, they didn't find the Mothman, but there are 2 other videos in their Mothman Lair series if you guys want to go check them out. Moving on to number 5 now, we have Urban Geeks. These are the guys who uploaded a video in May 2018 showing a creepy bunker they found in England. After exploring the surface level for a while, they eventually do go underground.
A nice bunker for everyone. Look at this. Oh my god. Oh yeah, like the little blast shields and stuff. Do you want to get the 2 torches out?
It gets darker and darker, the graffiti becomes more difficult to read, the walls look like they're crumbling around them, and then they see this.
Oh my god, how freaky is that? No, look at this. Maggot #2. They've actually tagged the machinery as maggots. Like, I don't know if this is gonna...
That's right, some graffiti telling them that they are being watched. Now your natural reaction if you saw this may be to just dismiss it as a joke, but part of you would still be wondering if someone really did live in that complex, watching every person that passed through, and perhaps never made it out. Eventually, the temperature actually started to plummet in there, and they decided to get out of there. Next up at number 4 now, we have Mezzarino. That's the name of this Australian YouTuber who went out to explore a bunker in 2016 2017. Now he actually went there not knowing anything about the place. He tried to do some research online and almost nothing came up. Now that would put some people off, but he decided to go for it anyway.
What is this joint?
After exploring the woods on the surface, they eventually find a small metal door. This led to a spiral staircase. The rooms at the bottom were covered in these creepy old white tiles. Eventually, they find one of the first signs of humans being down there, a Ouija board that had been written on paper. Clearly, someone had used this bunker to try and contact the spirit world. After visiting the bunker, the group had no more answers to their questions of who built this place, what was it used for, and why exactly was it abandoned.
Someone's been doing a Ouija board on paper. And this is their circle of demonic.
Next up at number 3 now, we have the Führer bunker. Now those of you who are up on your history will recognize this name immediately as the last headquarters of Adolf Hitler during World War II in Berlin and the place where he committed suicide. It's where Hitler made his last ditch attempts to save his Nazi regime as the armies of the Allies rolled towards Berlin. Like I said, Hitler killed himself, the Allies soon won the war after that, and the Soviets spent the next 4 years destroying Nazi landmarks. They tried to blow up the bunker but only partially succeeded. In more modern times, German authorities dismantled everything else and built a car park on top of it. You wouldn't even know you were there if you walked past it. This has been done intentionally in an attempt to stop the area becoming a neo-Nazi shrine. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the medical bunker. In July 2016, the YouTube channel Hell on Earth posted a video of them exploring an abandoned underground World War II medical bunker in Sheffield, England. Before going in there, they were told it was used as an air raid shelter for people trying to hide from German bombs and also to treat the wounded. One of the first things they found was some sort of melted candle thing or egg yolk. I don't know, you take a look, it's hard to tell.
Candle that's gone all rotten.
How can wax go rotten?
That's not a candle, that looks like grease.
There's probably someone's innards.
I think it's egg yolk. Oh, fry up, boys.
Oh, reeks.
Then things start to take a bit of a creepy turn when the guys hear a strange knocking sound in the background.
Ghost hunting? Well, this is where I came in.
What? What's that knocking noise?
Shine the light down.
Alright. What, a real...
The group carries on as far as they can, but eventually there are huge parts of the ceiling that have just caved in from the ground above. I was wondering what would come after if they kept exploring past that bit, but they didn't. They turned around and went out. Maybe they'll return one day. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Secret Forest Door. This video was uploaded by a World War II History Hunter channel in 2016 who explores old World War II sites. This one was an old German bunker. Now he's visited the site before this video, but this time he brought the equipment.
You can see that there are definitely tracks of human activity. This is built and we can go a bit further in before we can put on the...
The bunker looks to be in bad condition. Decades of water pouring in has corroded the iron and turned the wooden beams to pulp. He then finds a long hallway where the walls have metal bars coming right out of them. He guesses that this is because there used to be doors there before. Where they are now, he doesn't know. As he heads deeper into the bunker, the lack of light makes it almost impossible to film, and we have to rely solely on his verbal descriptions. He enters a huge room with stalactites coming down from the ceiling. He sees another door which leads to an area with more stairs.
How many stairs? 20, 30? There's a lot of them. Cool. This is the lookout position from the outside here. This is on the other side of where the hatch was.
These stairs actually seem to be built into the very living rock. Whatever the Germans were planning for this bunker during World War II, they wanted it to withstand a lot of firepower.
At number 10. Back in 1969, tunnels and bunkers were built underneath Beijing as a precautionary measure just in case the city was bombed. This new expansion resulted in about 19 miles of tunnels being built underneath this busy city. If you guys were to travel down down there, you would see homes, schools, entertainment venues, and there was even a roller skating rink. I don't know about you guys, but if the city that I was living in got bombed, I don't think I would be too concerned with having a roller skating rink, you know, in my underground city. I feel like that space could be used for, you know, storing food, or maybe even a hospital could have been built. The underground city was primarily built as a defense space, and according to the rumors online, each home even had a trap door so that residents can get to the center of the space safely in case, you know, of an attack. But despite all of the time and money put into these tunnels, the city was never used, and now it's used mostly as a tourist attraction. But of course there are a ton of people who are illegally living underneath due to the rising rent costs. Because if you go and hide down there, rent is free, and you have the roller skating place. The underground tunnels of Los Angeles breaks onto this list at number 9. Traveling back to the 1920s when prohibition was in full effect, some corrupt city officials ran drinking dens under the street of downtown Los Angeles. Why doesn't this surprise me? When the entire country was forced to go dry without any alcohol, apparently underneath downtown Los Angeles, the party was still alive. 11 miles of tunnels became passageways to basement speakeasies where people would load up on booze that was also plied by the mayor's office. But now these creepy tunnels are used very differently. There are stories of tunnels being used by the police to transport dangerous prisoners. Bank security uses these tunnels to move large sums amount of cash, and although most of these tunnels are closed off, dangerous people still lurk in these tunnels, and I'm betting you that you would never want to run into any of them. If I were you, I would just stay out of these tunnels because you just never know what can happen. And believe me, if something terrible happens, no one will be able to hear your screams or save you. And isn't it a little bit weird they're transporting money underground with convicts that they can cross paths? I mean, it seems like a pretty easy robbery. The robbery is coming to you. Number 8, we have a former hideout. Almost every city has a hidden life underneath the surface. But instead of just having a sewage system, gas, water, or subway lines, Berlin has a city of complex raid shelters and bunkers that were built during World War II. There is a labyrinth of hidden tunnels and shelters located underground that is sure to give you guys the chills. But not all the bunkers are accessible anymore. Hitler's bunker has been excavated and filled in, and it's just located underneath a parking lot, and I was able to see it. I actually went to where his bunker was. It's just a parking lot, like I went on top of it. It's kind of weird because there was residential buildings around, and one guy was actually yelling at us in German. I guess a lot of people are coming into the property and they don't like it. It's a public area. We were so scared. We thought Hitler was like coming back to life or something, so we just booked it on our bikes. But below the Jessenbrunnen train station, there is the largest network of tunnels and bunkers from the Nazi era, and it even contained an airplane manufacturing warehouse bunker. If you are the curious type, you can visit Berlin and take a tour of some of these bunkers, but just keep in mind that when you visit these underground cities, you're going to be very overwhelmed with emotions because you'll be reminded of what it was like during World War II and how many lives were lost to the Nazi regime. Burlington, England comes onto our list at number 7. These tunnels were constructed in the 1950s, and they were made so the English government could escape in case of a nuclear war. Burlington was the city's code name, and it was designed to hold up to 4,000 government employees, but they didn't just provide enough room to accommodate the rest of their families. I mean, take a look at this underground city. It was absolutely massive. It was made up of stone, and it spanned 60 miles. It was equipped with hospitals, a water treatment plant, a train station, a pub, and even a BBC station where the Prime Minister could make broadcasts, you know, in case of a nuclear blast. The city was still in operation until 1991, but now it is just a creepy, abandoned network of tunnels where I'm sure a lot of people are currently hiding out in. And now number 6, the Shanghai tunnels. Did you guys know that Portland has their very own underground city, and they're known as the Shanghai tunnels? These tunnels used to link Chinatown to central downtown area, but unfortunately this underground city hasn't been maintained very well, and it's actually a really creepy place to visit. However, some of these tunnels are still open, and they even offer tours if you're brave enough. Back in the day, these tunnels have also been used as a way to kidnap people, and they would be forced to leave everything behind and work as sailors. I mean, there's just something about this place that doesn't really appeal to me. If I were to ever visit Portland, I'm gonna avoid visiting these tunnels because I don't have any desire to see this old, creepy underground city. I mean, I'm just much more happier above ground. Edinburgh Vaults takes us all the way over to number 5. Beneath the cobblestone streets of Edinburgh, there's a dark and damp underground world that dates back to the 18th century. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, think again. The Edinburgh vaults are a series of chambers, and they were opened during a time when people were highly superstitious. If you were to visit these tunnels today, you'll feel like something bad is about to happen to you. Not a good feeling at all. It was originally built for tradesmen to use and to store illegal materials, and there are also a ton of rumors that two infamous serial killers known as Burke and Hare stored dead bodies down there. As time went on, the vaults became home to some of the most poorest people in the city. It was basically like a skid row that had pubs and brothels scattered throughout the tunnels. It was so grim and bleak that it would make the most dangerous city in the world seem nice in comparison. The city of the gods comes in on this list at number 4. Underneath the pyramids of Giza, there is a secret abandoned city underneath this amazing structure. It's made up of tons of chambers and tunnels, and researchers didn't even begin investigating this underground city until 1978. When they found it, they were baffled by it. They started to map it out as they tried to piece it together. They had a hard time discovering what it was used for and why it was even built in the first place. Some people still don't believe that this underground world exists, while others are still trying to come up with an answer as to why this massive city was built. For all we know, this city is cursed, and anyone who tries to step inside will probably die from an ancient Egyptian curse. So I vote that we just leave this city underground and forget that it even exists. Number 3 brings us to Derinkuyu, located in Turkey. This creepy underground city is located in an area that is home to 36 underground cities. They can all be found at depths of 85 meters below, which is quite deep, but the one I'm talking about right now is by far the deepest. It was discovered in 1963, and it consists of tunnels and rooms such as living quarters, stables, churches, storage rooms, and wineries, because why not? Some people say that it used to house around 20,000 people. Only 10% of the underground city is accessible to visitors, so who knows what else these tunnels are hiding. It is also believed that there are a ton of dead bodies that were buried down there, so this underground city could be home to thousands of decaying corpses, and you're telling me that I can buy a ticket to explore it? I mean, no thanks, I'm good. Paris Catacombs is up next at number 2. Underneath the streets of Paris, there's a place known as the Catacombs, where bones of 6 million Parisians can be found. The catacombs were built in the late 18th century because graveyards were overflowing, so the bones of the dead were taken out of the dirt and arranged in this underground city. This sounds like this should be a plot for like a horror movie, but this is real life. A portion of the catacombs are open to the public, but there are dozens of secret entrances that can be found all around Paris. There are miles and miles of tunnels, and not all of them have been mapped out. If you go into the tunnels illegally, you can easily get lost, and unfortunately for you, you will probably never see the surface again. Apparently there was some footage of a man who went insane inside of the catacombs. According to the rumors, if you enter the catacombs after midnight, you can hear the walls talking to you, and voices will actually try to lure you in, further into the tunnels. Well, in that tape, the man dropped the camera and ran off into the darkness and was never seen again. If that's not terrifying enough, people in cults are said to steal bodies from morgues and bring them into the catacombs to perform evil rituals. So yeah, it's probably best to just visit the Eiffel Tower instead because it's pretty close by. Hell brings us to number 1. Under the streets of Romania's capital, Bucharest, there is a network of tunnels and sewers that is home to hundreds of men and women and even children who are battling with drug addiction. They're also battling with HIV and TB. An entire generation of children are growing up in the sewers because they're forced to leave orphanages that were overthrown by the communist regime. These kids took refuge in sewers back in 1989, and now they have grown into adults. In order to get inside of this corrupted, underground city, you need to get permission from their leader. Well, this guy goes by the name of Bruce Lee. I kid you guys not, I didn't believe this when I was first researching. I'm like, oh my god, I'm being internet trolled right now. I mean, I still might be internet trolled, but this guy Bruce Lee has lived in the sewers for the past 24 years, and he is treated like a king by those who live underground. These tunnels run for about 2 kilometers, and it is full of garbage, soiled clothes, and of course, there's a lot of drugs. During the day, the kids go out and search for food, but at night they return to the sewers. I had no idea something like this was actually happening in, today's modern world. It's really eye-opening. This sounds absolutely insane, and I hope that officials will stop turning a blind eye to this massive problem and provide these people with adequate medical resources and shelter.
First one we're talking about at number 10 is Edinburgh Vaults. Located underneath Scotland's capital of Edinburgh are the Edinburgh Vaults. They are also known as the South Bridge Vault since they are located within the 19 arches of the South Bridge. Traveling back in time to 1788 when Edinburgh was a superstitious place, that's when these vaults opened up. People say they still give off a vibe of gore and ghastliness. They were originally built to house taverns, cobblers, cutlers, smelters, and other tradesmen, and to store illicit materials. In addition to those illicit materials, there are rumors that bodies were stored down there as well. Specifically, it's thought that serial killers Burke and Hare stored various bodies down in the vaults, which they sold for medical experiments. So once businesses moved out of the vaults and the little city that was there left, it became home to the poorest people in the city. It became its own little city of pubs and brothels scattered around the damp underground chambers. It was still a bit grim though in the little vaults, especially with all that history that went down. On to number 9, Derinkuyu. So this ancient underground city is located beneath the real Cappadocia city in Turkey. Cappadocia in central Turkey has at least 36 old cities nearby underground. The deepest is the one I just said, Derinkuyu. So this subterranean network of tunnels was discovered in 1963 and had everything you need for a city. It had living quarters, stables, churches, storage rooms, refectories, and wineries. And also, it could have possibly held more than 20,000 people. The city was fully formed in the Byzantine era as protection from the Muslim Arabs during the Arab-Byzantine Wars from the 8th century to the 12th century. It was even connected to other cities underground through tunnels that were many miles long. Like, just thinking about it, that's a big network and probably a lot of carving to do. Anyways, continuously for centuries, the underground cities were used as an escape from waves of wars by many different cultures. When there was so much danger above ground, it became a place of refuge. Honestly, I just hope no one got stir crazy from being underground for that long. When it was discovered in 1963, it was because a man who lived in the area found a mysterious room behind a wall at his house, and lo and behold, it was an access point to the tunnel network. Right now, only 10% of the underground city is accessible for visitors if you want to take a peek, but I know that's a trip I would love to take. Just imagine finding intricate tunnels through a secret doorway at your house. I'm pretty jealous, honestly. It's very Narnia, you know? That vibe. Number 8. Dixia Cheng. So Dixia Cheng has been referred to as the Underground Great Wall as well as just Underground City. It's in Beijing, China, and was built in the 70s as a shelter from any invasions, bombings, or nuclear attacks. It is still a long network of tunnels that has nearly 100 hidden entrances. It was also reportedly built with complete services such as schools, hospitals, and sleeping halls. This was all just in case citizens needed to hold out a little longer underground. It is said that there was even a skating rink and a 1,000-seat theater. So just think of it as a great big bunker city. Kind of not so nice circumstances if it needed to be used though. And so while it was created to prepare for the worst, it never had to be used for its intended purpose, and so in 2000, a portion of it was open to the public until 2008. Since then, it's been closed for renovations, and the only citizens down there are illegal residents squatting there due to the rising rent in the above city. Next up at number 7 are the tunnels of Moose Jaw. So these are in Moose Jaw, Canada, and with a name like Moose Jaw, what country really did you expect? Canada. So if you're unaware, Moose Jaw is located in the province of Saskatchewan in Canada. The tunnels in the city have 2 separate stories made up of a maze of tunnels where entire families lived. So they came to be when Canada imposed a head tax on Chinese immigrants when there were fears that they would take away jobs from locals. To keep on the down low, illegal Chinese immigrants went down below into the tunnels. They would live in the tunnels and then work at local businesses in exchange for food and supplies. Then these tunnels were repurposed in the 20s. At that time, the US was going through prohibition of alcohol, but Canada was not. So mix together tunnels and prohibition and you get bootlegging to the States. Hey! Al Capone is rumored to be connected to all of the bootlegging, but there are no records to say for sure. But where there's bootlegging, there is probably other crime or illegal activities, so who really knows what went down in those tunnels. Definitely wasn't recorded because you don't want to record your illegal activities. I mean, don't do illegal activities. It just goes in a circle. Number 6. Pardon my pronunciation. Naurs is an underground abandoned city located in the northern part of France. It's hidden 100 feet beneath a forested plateau. It has 2 miles of tunnels and over 300 man-made rooms. And like other underground cities I've mentioned, it was made as a place of protection and refuge. It began in the 3rd century as a part of a Roman quarry, but locals began to use it as a hiding place, so it was converted and expanded into a little underground village around the Middle Ages. It had its own chapels, stables, wells, and bakeries, and peaked at possibly 3,000 residents. In recent times, it was sealed off for a bit before being reopened as a tourist attraction, and it was also a popular site to visit during the First World War. Allied soldiers left behind more than 2,000 pieces of graffiti. Many of the soldiers that visited fought nearby at the Battle of the Somme, so seeing as people were there during a world war, I was wondering if, any spies got it. I don't know, just curious. Who knows? Little secret messages in the graffiti. Let's move on to number 5, Petra. So this partially underground city is located in the mountains of southern Jordan. The area had been inhabited for a very long time, but it reached its peak around 2,000 years ago. At that time, the ancient Nabateans hand-chiseled the hillsides into buildings. The sandstone was carved into tombs, banquet halls, and temples. Petra could have had a population of 20,000 people at its peak, but it's unknown how many more ruins could be discovered. Maybe it's more. Since, as it's believed much more is to be found underground, it could go on and on. Europeans didn't find it until the 1800s, so if you've seen it, it's most likely because it's made a cameo in Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade. Let's move on to number 4, Burlington, and I'm not saying Vermont and I'm not saying Ontario. 100 feet below the village of Corsham is a 35-acre underground complex that was built in the event of a Cold War era nuclear strike. It was codenamed the Burlington Bunker, and it was built in the 50s from a pre-existing quarry in its original tunnels. It had office spaces, cafeterias, medical facilities, spaces to sleep, and even a telephone exchange. The bunker was to be used for the British Prime Minister and 4,000 other government personnel alive during an emergency, and it even had an in-house BBC studio so the Prime Minister could send out messages to the public. It never had use, and it was declassified in 2004. But the fact they even had to think that they had to build a bunker is kind of scary. Number 3, City of the Gods, Giza Plateau. So, you know the pyramids of Giza, but what about the City of the Gods? Located underneath the pyramids is an abandoned underground city. There are chambers of tunnels still being mapped out to figure out their purpose since it was discovered in 1978, which is pretty recently if you think about it. It was named the City of Gods by the researchers that discovered it. So some people straight up just don't think it exists, but either way, researchers continue to look into it. They want to try to unearth more meaning as why it's there and map it out. Since they were traps to protect the tombs of the pharaohs and kings, who knows what the researchers may run into down there, so I recommend they keep an eye out. And number 2, Shanghai tunnels in Portland. So they are more tunnels than city, but kind of had their own little city thing going on. The Shanghai tunnels in Portland were originally tunnels for businesses. They were a means of connecting businesses in the city with the ports to transfer goods to them. But then businesses stopped using them to transfer goods as much, and people started using them to transfer people. Yeah, not so good. Essentially, people were drugged and taken into the tunnels to be used as slaves for different forms of work. The most common thing for them to be taken for at the time was to work on a boat while the ship moved across water. Since many of the boats headed to Shanghai, China, that's how it got the name Shanghai Tunnel. It's estimated that over 2,000 people were shanghaied using these tunnels. Now people hear moans, talking, screaming, or crying, and there's even the ghost of a woman named Nina under the Old Town Pizza Parlor. So if you need to travel around, maybe don't use the tunnels unless you really have to because it's super cold or something. There's just a lot happening down there. But let's finish off with a fictional one today, and number 1 is District 13. In the Hunger Games books and movies, District 13 was a community hiding underground to avoid the capital and its exploitation of the district's resources and workers. Its primary industry was nuclear weapons, and they used the threat of their own weapon technology to get independence from the capital and Pan Am. It was basically a mini Cold War in the lore, you know. Anyways, the capital told the other districts that District 13 was obliterated with toxic bombs using propaganda showing smoldering wasteland where District 13 used to be. But they were there, hiding underground. They didn't really get to do much, had strict schedules, and didn't really have yearly celebrations or anything fun, so it was probably pretty mundane down there, but they were hiding out during wartime, so that seems to be what people were doing underground in most of these.
Starting off this countdown, we have the secret underground community. Believe it or not, but there is a group of urban explorers that like to hang out in the Paris catacombs. They call themselves the Cataphiles, and they sneak into the tunnels, evade the police, and then go exploring. In fact, they have claimed a number of sections as their own, marking it with murals and graffiti. Not only that, but they have found secret ways to get into the catacombs. Plus, they've started mapping the whole place out so that other explorers don't get lost. Only problem is that this is a very dangerous hobby. Since they are entering restricted areas in the catacombs, they have to watch out for crumbling walls, falling rocks, even pools of water. I don't know about you, but I prefer to spend my time with the living and not the dead. In our 9th spot, we have the Lost Girl. In 2005, a group of teens illegally snuck into the catacombs on New Year's. Sadly, they all didn't make it out alive. They all were drinking and having a blast when one of their friends, Masha, wandered off alone. When they finally realized she had disappeared, they went out looking for her but couldn't find her. No one knew what happened to her until 4 months later. That's when a group of boys were exploring the catacombs when they stumbled upon her frozen body. Since she was drunk, she wandered off to another section of the catacombs and then got lost and froze to death. How heartbreaking. Coming in at number 8, we have Philibert Aspel. Philibert Aspel was a doorkeeper at the Val de Grace Hospital during the French Revolution. And the hotel actually had a staircase located in the courtyard that would lead to the catacombs. So one night in November of 1793, Philibert descended into the catacombs to retrieve a bottle of liquor stored down there. However, he only brought one candle with him and it was not enough to light the way. Eventually it blew out and he was down there in pitch black. Being semi-intoxicated, he stumbled around the catacombs lost. For 11 years, no one knew what happened to him. That was until 1804 when his body was found. He was identified by the hospital keyring hanging from his belt. Moving on to number 7, we have the Whispering Walls. A number of explorers have claimed that no one should ever be in the Paris catacombs after midnight. For if you are, then the walls will begin to speak. People have claimed to have heard disembodied voices coming from the catacombs. These voices confuse them and try to persuade them to travel deeper and deeper into the catacombs until you're in too far that you're lost and you can't escape. Actually, fun fact, they use this as inspiration for the movie As Above, So Below, which takes place in the Paris catacombs. In our 6th spot today, we have the camera system. In 2004, a group of French police explored some of the restricted areas of the Paris catacombs. And that's when they discovered something truly terrifying. First, they found a PA system that when triggered would play sounds of guard dogs barking. Then they found a full-on bar, living area, workshop, lounge, and cinema with space to fit 20 people. Like what? Not only that, but whoever created this little home setup was stealing other people's electricity from above. The creepiest part is that they had a full-on security camera set up, and the police soon realized that they were being watched. They left to get a bigger team to further investigate the area, but by the time they got back, everything was gone. The only thing left was a note that read, "Don't search." We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with De Quille. De Quille is the name of a very mysterious man. We don't know much about him, but we do know that he was a veteran of the French army, and he was also an artist. In fact, he created a number of sculptures for the catacombs. However, this eventually led to his death. During the construction of one of his sculptures, a part of it fell and crushed him completely. It's said that to this day, his soul wanders the catacombs. In fact, people have seen him down there before. In our 4th spot today, we have the Crypt of Passions. The Crypt of Passions, located in the ossuary, is a pillar that is covered in skulls to the point that it's just completely concealed. The skulls end up forming what looks like a barrel, which is creepy for a number of reasons. Just take in, those are real skulls. You're surrounded by people who used to be living, and most of them died in tragic ways, and then their bones were used for an art display. A number of people who have visited this area in the catacombs have reported feeling very uneasy around the Crypt of Passion. It's believed that some of the souls that were placed there have not found peace. I mean, in some cultures, they believe that a proper burial must be done with a tomb marker, or else the soul will never be able to rest or go to the afterlife. However, that was not possible at the time. The catacombs were built because grave overcrowding was a serious issue back then, among other things. In our 3rd spot today, we have the scratch marks. There's this really creepy area in the Paris catacombs where it's just a wall of scratches. Like, it looks as if bodies rose from the dead and tried to scratch their way out. It's a creepy touch to the place, that's for sure. Moving on to number 2, we have the Lost Tape. Now, I'm sure all of you have heard about this urban legend before, and in fact it also inspired the movie As Above, So Below. And it might not even be a legend, it might be real, but to this day, no one knows. Once upon a time in 1990, a weird dusty camcorder was discovered in the catacombs. The camera appeared to have been there for quite some time, so they decided to inspect it. What was found on it was very disturbing. The video was of an unidentified male explorer wandering around the catacombs. While down there, we see him interacting with the skulls around him. But then something spooks the man and he ends up growing paranoid and panicked. At one point, he drops the camera and just runs away. Sadly, he never made it out alive. This tape contains the final moments of his life. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the criminals. In 2017, it was discovered that a group of robbers used the catacombs to break into an apartment. Basically, they figured out that the catacombs were right under an apartment vault. So they drilled their way in through the limestone and entered the apartment to steal over 300 bottles of vintage wine. In total, they valued at close to 250,000 euros. Isn't that insane?
Kicking off the list at number 10, underwater Mayan cave. Back in 2018, a diver was exploring flooded caves in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, and they were at the beach, they were swimming around doing their thing, and they saw this opening, and it was about 1.5 feet wide and 3 feet tall. Barely big enough for one person, and this diver went through, which by itself is so terrifying. I'm already impressed here. Once they were in, they found out that this underwater tunnel connected the Saskatoon Cave and the Dos Ojos cave systems together. So this is now a wonderful discovery. Now it's considered one of the longest underwater systems in the world, running about 347 kilometers long. That's a long time to be underwater. That's for a little oxygen thing too. I wouldn't go in there at all. This cave has been untouched since the last ice age, and the 200 spots filled with bones, Mayan altars, and fossils belonging to now extinct animals. It's literally a time capsule from 15,000 years ago. If you're diving through small cave entrances, don't go alone. You might get stuck, or you'll find 1,000 bones. I don't know which one I'd rather. Both sound terrifying, honestly. Those are all things I don't want to experience by myself, let alone experience underwater. Hard pass. Number 9, St. Patrick's Purgatory. All the way from the 15th century, St. Patrick's Purgatory is located on Ireland's Station Island, and the tale goes like this. St. Patrick was once getting frustrated with his followers, again way back in the day. They were doubting him until Jesus himself appeared before him and then guided him to a cave on Station Island. Now inside of this cave, this tunnel systems, there was this pit that was said to be the gateway to purgatory. It's called Satan's Pit. That's where souls go to endure punishments for their sins before being able to enter with the God Squad up above in heaven. So while he was here, St. Patrick also saw visions of hell and the horrors within. Then from the 12th century and onwards, the island has attracted those who wanted to get a closer glimpse of purgatory, but in 1632 it was officially closed off to the public, thank God, and most of the records that took place prior were destroyed. To this day, believers will still travel to the island and participate in a 3-day contemplation of the nature of hell. So yeah, they'd walk barefoot the entire time, and it's considered the most challenging in all of Europe and potentially the entirety of the Christian world. Number 8, Moonville Tunnel. About 30 minutes away from the castle in the woods of Vinton County, Ohio, we have this haunted tunnel from the late 1800s. Now, the legend has it, if you walk through this tunnel, you'll hear the cries from a railroad brakeman who lost his life after being struck by, you guessed it, a train. Now apparently this tunnel has taken more than just one life as well. It was sadly quite common for pedestrians to attempt walking through it to save some time, only to meet an oncoming train when they were about halfway through. It wasn't until 1986 where trains stopped running entirely. Another account says that if you turn your car off inside this tunnel or sit near it with your car off, you'll hear the cries of those lost in the tunnel. Maybe the ghosts don't like emissions from your car. Maybe they just want to rest in peace. Also, electric vehicles only. I don't know. Number 7, Tapir Mountain, Belize. Home of the Crystal Maiden Sacrifice. Cool. Doesn't that sound inviting already? Neat. The Mayans believed that the entrance to their underworld, Xibalba, was located in these cave networks. The name of the cave. Acton Tenichel Mucknell, discovered in 1989, translates to Cave of the Crystal Sepulchre, and the nature reserve has already had its fair share of dark stories surrounding it. There were once rivers of blood and scorpions flowing through here. Literally the worst thing I can think of together. The site has been described as a subterranean labyrinth overseen by the Mayan death gods, the lords of Xibalba. Obviously, explorers love to go and check this place out, and let's be real, even me mentioning Mayan death gods, you're probably like, how much are flights? Let's just hypothetically look, I don't know. Number 6, Mount Hecla. Mount Hecla is a stratovolcano located in South Island. Yeah, a stratovolcano. Pretty intense. This is an extremely active volcano site, which of course has something to do with people believing it's a cavern or a tunnel to hell or some sort of underworld. There is an Anglo-Norman poem called The Voyage of St. Brendan, and in it mentions this volcano, and it happens to be the prison of Judas, the apostle who famously betrayed Jesus. And to add to this apocalyptic image, these firebirds were also said to be swarming around the volcano, and they were once thought to be lost souls, not birds on fire that were near the volcano because they were near a volcano, you get it. It was believed that the volcano was also a hot hangout for witches who were trying to slide in the devil's DMs. All these legends combined, it totally makes sense why people would think there's some sort of dark evil power lurking inside of the volcano, especially considering it's one of the most active volcanoes on Iceland. In 1811, Herbert de Clairvaux wrote about the volcano and its small tunnel that he referred to as Hell's Chimney. Interesting. He too referred to Mount Hecla as the internal prison of Judas. Number 5, the Mayan underworld. Moving back over to the ancient Maya, back in 2003 in Mexico, archaeologist Sergio Gomez arrived to work. It's the beautiful Mayan serpent pyramid. He arrived there and there was now a sinkhole that just appeared overnight. It was super close to the actual pyramid, so Sergio covered it with a tent quickly. Obviously, they don't want people looking over there to be like, what's going on? Are the aliens? What's going on? Sergio had been working there for 30 years. He knew the serpent pyramid like the back of his hand, but what he found that day was hiding underneath him his entire career. He got a few co-workers to literally lower him into this fresh sinkhole, so right off the bat, this guy deserves a raise, for sure. He was lowered down into a, you guessed it, a tunnel. This tunnel was blocked off purposely 2,000 years prior, so there was a lot of work to be done, but why was it blocked? The tunnel was excavated for about a year afterwards, and it was determined it was blocked on purpose. The tunnel connected the serpent pyramid to the Temple of the Moon, and then to the Temple of the Sun. Now, it's one thing to discover secret tunnels and pyramid entrances your entire life, but to fall down another layer of secrets almost 30 years later, I have a feeling we'll never really know who built these or why. Number 4, the Devil's Sinkhole. Great name, already looking forward to this one. Located in Rock Springs, Texas, we can find this massive 50 feet wide and 400 feet deep hole. It's massive, and I'm also going to say this is a tunnel. This is legally a tunnel, that's quite big. Residents first discovered the sinkhole in 1876, and ever since then they found arrowheads, burnt rocks, signs of life spanning back hundreds of years. It's great. I think it's pretty creepy. With all these sinkholes just appearing overnight, and the fact that they lead us most of the time to bones, it's pretty alarming. It's almost like Earth wants us to find the bones. These discoveries are what has led people to believe that it may have been once used as some sort of burial ground, or perhaps even a place of sacrifice. Yes, some of these tunnels are full of ancient artwork spanning back to the beginning of humanity, others are just full of bones and bats. Simply put, residents will often gather in the evening, and if they're lucky, see around 3 million bats emerge from the sinkhole tunnel and then find food. So if you don't like bats, avoid this one. Number 3, the Paris Catacombs. Yeah, we had to mention this one. What feels like a never-ending maze. These tunnels under Paris stretch for hundreds of miles. There have been movies on these catacombs. As Above, So Below is a good one. And then there's other ones that I can't think of, but there's more, probably. See, originally the tunnels were built for Paris stone mines, but near the end of the 18th century, its purpose started to shift. See, cemeteries were starting to pile up, literally and figuratively. They weren't as good as getting rid of bodies in clean ways. They handled the dead back then like we handle garbage today, just shooting it out of sight, out of mind. We're good. What's the worst that could happen? We're not gonna melt our planet. The cleanliness thing though, so bodies would just be laying on the side of the road. They started to pile up, so the solution was to use these catacombs and just throw the bodies under there, just hide them all. These tunnels have been there now for centuries. Might as well put them to good use, and by good use I mean let's just stack skulls in an orderly fashion. And then you know what? Stack some more skulls while you're down there. It's terrifying, I've seen photos, I'm never going down here. Number 2, Pluto's Gate. Also known as the Gate to Hell. Always to hell, it's never to heaven or like to, you know, Applebee's. These ruins discovered in Turkey back in 1965 are beautiful, but obviously they're cursed. And by cursed I mean there's some science behind it. Historians believe that this site is the ancient city of Hierapolis, and if you want to go visit these eerie ruins, you better leave the family gecko behind. Any animal that goes in here apparently just dies. They stop breathing. Once sparrows were tossed in, and then they immediately stopped breathing and dropped. Also, sparrows? Really? Like, use pigeons if we're testing things out. I don't know. I don't like pigeons. Scientists have figured out the solution, and I guess it's pretty haunting. They measure the CO2 concentration, and while the sun's up, it burns away at this gas, but then at night, when the temperature drops significantly, because that's what happens when the sun goes down, the CO2 becomes heavier than air, it creates this deadly gas cloud on the floor, and then you go, and then you die. That's pretty much it. If you're a bird, if you have human lungs that are bigger, you'll survive, but most of the time, humans and animals, just stay away from this. So for a long time, these tunnels were thought to be haunted or paranormal or whatever the case, and while yeah, it's still concerning, we can safely say this one falls back on science, like most things. And finally, number 1, the Screaming Tunnel. This next one is in Ontario, Canada, so maybe I'll check it out on my lunch break right after this. Lunchables with a demon. Sounds great, let's do it. The Screaming Tunnel. First of all, that name is great, that's how you do it. Get to the punch right away. There are a few stories behind this one, like most tunnels around the world, but one version is pretty haunting and it kind of stuck with me. So now it has to stick with you. If you came out of an old tunnel and saw a farmhouse, you wouldn't think anything of it. Some old-timey farm train lifestyle, the classic, but the story behind this farmhouse is haunting. Near the south entrance, the farmhouse back in the day caught fire and a woman ran out of the house, obviously on fire. She ran to the tunnel to try and find help or anything, but she sadly didn't make it, and that's where she ended up dying. So now, if you go through the tunnel, you'll hear the screams of this woman around. So don't go to this tunnel, basically. Don't go in this tunnel if you're on fire either. That's also another step, an add-on, if I may.